Welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, with your host, Mark Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields and academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, brought to you by Great Success Education. I'm your host, Mark Hoberman, and my guest host is Susan Brender. How's it going, Susan?
It's going well, and thank you for having me as your co-host, as always.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I know a couple of weeks ago we interviewed a director, Arthur Kanagas, and today we have another kind of director, producer, a lot in the radio realm, and I think he's going to tell us a lot about some exciting things he's doing and he has done. So let's bring him on.
Okay.
Our guest today is Emmy-Award winning producer, director, Bill Natale. Did I say that right, Bill?
You did.
Hey, Bill, welcome to Lighting the Educational Flame.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
So nice to have you. Of course, Susan's here and she's waiting with bated breath to ask you very probing questions.
I hope so.
First, yes. What was your path that led you to be involved in broadcasting?
Actually, my path that led me to be involved in broadcasting kind of came about by through my father. My dad was a fireman, and he was in a terrible fire, and the ceiling came in on him and more or less broke his back, and so he wound up in a hospital. And at that time, you shared a room; you didn't get private rooms, and he wound up sharing a room with the production manager of WGN. Ralph Jack is his name, and Ralph left earlier than my father, but he said to my father, he gave him his card and he said, "John, I know you got little ones because I've seen them here. If you ever want to bring them by to see Garfield Goose or Bozo or something like that, give me a call. I'll be glad to, make that possible." So when my dad got out, he called Ralph Jack, and Ralph said, well, Bozo's not in production right now, but Garfield Goose is. So bring the boys in. As it turned out, Garfield Goose, unlike Bozo, didn't really have a live audience. So Fraser Thomas was not happy about having these two kids sitting there, and but he couldn't say much because Ralph Jack was the production manager. So anyway, I went to the show with my brother, and that was it. I mean, I was hooked, and I just said, now I know what I want to do. I want to be in broadcasting. And as it turned out, the high school we went to, St. Pat's High School in Chicago, got a lot of equipment for WGN when I became a freshman and started a little TV club, and we broadcast the basketball games. And that really also hooked me. I became a camera operator, and I've been in management as high as vice president or executive director, sort of like the CEO of that portion of the company. And then I've been, in the trenches. I've been an audio tech, camera. I did a lot of Bulls, Hawks, Cubs, White Sox, St. Louis Cardinals games. So I did a lot of camera work. And again, I love that part of the business too, by the way.
Bill, it's interesting that you mentioned that because many years ago, I interviewed Chuck Jones. Now, Chuck Jones, as you know, was Mickey Mouse, you name it.
Oh, yeah.
And what was so amazing is how he started the business. He actually, didn't make money. The interesting part about it is he didn't make money.
Right.
But he's an icon. And it sounds like you made lemons into lemonade. And your father inspired that. Am I correct?
Yeah, he did inspire that. I wound up getting what's known as a 9-month vacation relief program job with WGN. This was after I'd already worked for a couple of small radio stations. And actually, I just called WGN because I hated where I was at. And Ralph Jack answered. And I don't think he recognized me at first, to be honest with you, when I gave the name. But he said, "Yeah, we might have an opening. I don't know." And I said, he said, you know much about TV? And then I tell him about my Fraser Thomas experience. And I said, I think you know my dad. And he said, is your dad a fireman? I go, yeah. He goes, oh yeah, come on in. So I came in, and he said, yeah, I got a vacation relief job. And that's how I started. And I started out as a technician, and already had a bit of experience again running audio boards for radio stations. And so that's kind of how I got into it. But, you know, when you mentioned Chuck Jones, we would see him many times because I was the chairman of the Broadcast Promotion Marketing Executives Conference. Matter of fact, I did the last one that was here in Chicago in 1985, and 3,500 people came to that, and Chuck Jones was there. And that was the first year that we did Roger Ebert and Jane Siskel. They were still on WTTW, so they were still on PBS. But I asked them if they would look at, 50 promos, pick 10 out of it, and then say why these 10 were, outstanding. And that became a tradition that they did up until, Gene died, and then Roger didn't do it after that. But we did it for a number of years. And Chuck Jones was an icon. I mean, everybody worshiped Chuck Jones because he was, his graphics were just amazing. But just to tell you, after the WGN job, I went back to a minimum wage job out in Rockford, Illinois, at $2.30 an hour. I went from, $400 a week, but overtime, down to barely scratching it out at about $105. But I just said, look, you know what? This is what I got myself into. I'm not just going to go on the beach somewhere. I'm going to stay in the biz. And it was a great thing because I learned a lot of things that I couldn't learn at WGN because WGN was so heavily unionized. You couldn't do a lot of things. You couldn't build sets. You couldn't light. You couldn't, unless you were in that union. I was in the IBEW. I was in the tech union, so I wasn't in the IATSE union. So there were a number of things that I learned from that experience that really worked out.
Mark, when he talks about all of the things that he did and then leads up to the fact that he really didn't make money, I bet, and you probably are thinking the same thing, that he had a passion for what he did.
Absolutely. I was going to say that it's so great because it is an educational show, and he's telling our viewers, both young and old, that the path is not always easy. We say this all the time, Bill, that people know the glory, but they don't know the story. The fact that you had to go backwards after you went forwards and took a step back is incredible. It shows people the perseverance. You have to have a passion and a love. Like you said, well, this is the path I chose and I'm going to follow through. So perseverance is so important. But I would say that your career spans so many years and so many experiences. You really have, through the years, given back a lot. So what was your affiliation when we talk about students and younger people? What was your affiliation with the Center for Broadcasting in Illinois?
Well, what happened on that, I got to know a gentleman when I was at NBC TV. He was the program director. And I was the promotion director for a number of years for NBC in Chicago. And, we became friends. But then, I left NBC to become a vice president of WTTW PBS. And we kind of lost touch with each other. But, I still remembered, David's name and everything. And I was calling, I got an assignment one day. Actually, I got a phone call, and I had my own production company at the time. And I was just working out of the house, basically, but I had my own office and everything else. And I got a call if I could do a test spot for a pharmaceutical company. And I said, well, there's other people that are better at doing this. And I said, no, we were told you could do this because we need to have this the day after tomorrow. And it was like, what? Yeah. So I realized, because they needed it by, this was on a Monday, they needed it by 10:30 on Wednesday in New York. And I realized that I didn't have time to go down to a studio in Chicago to try to shoot this and get this done. They wanted a model, they had all sorts of particulars because the CEO wanted to, he kept saying, yeah, make it a blonde if you can. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Anyway, so they gave me a script, and I was to shoot this on a green screen, and then we were to lay in visuals. And my wife was a great Emmy Award winning editor. And so she took care of that portion of it. And we had, this is early 90s, we had we had a huge system for editing. And anyway, I wind up finding out that there's a broadcast school in Lombard, Illinois. And I thought, well, okay, they got to have lights and, a teleprompter and camera. So I call over there, and the receptionist, who's a gatekeeper, says, oh no, we don't rent that out to anybody. No. We just, it's a school. We don't do that. And I said, well, who's in charge? And when she told me, well, Patrick Johnson's away on business, I said, well, who's second in charge? And when she told me it was David, I said, yeah, let me talk to David. I said, we're friends. And she said, what? And I go, yeah, we work together at NBC. So David comes on the line. He says, come on over. Absolutely. Can you use some of my students? Because that's the way I can do it. As long as you use them. And I go, sure, I'll use them. So I went over there, and I realized it wasn't quite right. But fortunately, I had worked out at Arlington racetrack, and I'd worked out there as a camera operator and as a director. And I made a call out to Kevin Clark, and Kevin said, Bill, we just got a green studio. I mean, we literally finished painting it yesterday. It's huge. And I said, well, can I come out and rent it? And how much do I owe you? And he goes, oh, you've done us so many favors. You can have it for free. It was like, what? So I went out there, and I'm in the hallway, and now I'm thinking, now where do I get a model? And I'm running out of time, frankly. And I see this very attractive blonde production assistant walking down the hallway. And I said to Kevin, does she do any on camera? And he goes, well, she's trying to, get on camera stuff. And so I said, would you mind? I mean, we'll pay her. I said, would you mind if and he goes, no, go ahead. So I asked her, and she said, oh man, Kevin, can I? I mean, I'm trying to build my reel. And Kevin said, yeah, okay. So I had to take a picture of her and actually send it to, I had to send it to the CEO, and we sent it via fax, but she was approved. And next thing you know, we do the spot. She walks to the green part, and and I had points on the floor. You walk to here, to walk to there, to walk to there. And then I knew the graphics were going to go in. So that's how I first learned about the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, the Lombard campus. And then a few years later, David called me and said, hey, a guy's absent. Could you come in and teach, and cover it? And I go, well, yeah, sure. Okay, I'm not doing anything today. I was freelance. And I said, but I'm not really a teacher. And he goes, no, come on in. So I came in, taught the class, and he sat in the back, watched me a little bit, and said, you're a natural for this. Will you teach for us? And I said, well, as long as we can be flexible on the schedule, yeah, I'll teach for you. And that's how it started. And I wound up meeting the president at an open house for the Lombard campus. They got a new section or whatever, and he winds up showing up, and we get to talking about broadcasting. And unbeknownst to me, they're building a campus downtown. And so, I get a phone call about a week later, and he's back in town because he was headquartered out of Cleveland at that time. Now it's Miami. And he said, can you come to lunch? And I did. And that's when they offered me the education director's job, not running it, but, second in command. And I said, I've never been an education director. I'm not sure I can do this.
Bill, I want to step in for a second. And I think it's so interesting because if you're at the right place at the right time, it's an amazing what things can happen.
Yeah.
And for you, it sounds like it did. Now, let's lead to the other side of the story, and that is your books, because you were a filmmaker, okay? And, tell me what else that I should add to that. You were a filmmaker, and a person who did shows and, did a lot.
Right.
But now you're writing books. So the question becomes, is that your passion as well?
Yeah, I always wanted to write, but I got to be honest with you. The first book, this children's book, was you both know Paul and Angel Harvey. I know you know those names. And Red Quinlan, who you might know that name, you might not. He used to be the general manager of Fox 32 here in Chicago. And Red was also the guy who put WBKB on the air, ABC's station. Anyway, I knew him through WTTW because he was an advisor to WTTW. And then when I left WTTW and went freelance, he said to me, would you meet with the Harveys? And I did. And then I started doing PR. But what happened was Mrs. Harvey said to me, we have a son. He composes music that the CSO, performs, but he won't record anything. So could you get him to record something? And I said, I don't think so. I mean, if he doesn't really want to, she goes, please talk to him. And I, okay. So I thought, the only way that's going to work is if I bring in a buddy of mine who had a studio, an audio studio, and was a classical pianist and sang in the chorale for the opera. So I thought, maybe if I put the two of them, and so we went to lunch and put them together, and we wound up recording, a whole album and then that's when Mrs. Harvey said, hey, if you ever did you ever have a passion for anything? And I go, well, yeah, I mean, I have a passion to maybe someday actually have a children's book. And she goes, have you written anything? I go, yeah. Send me the story, which I did. She called me back and said, we'll publish it. And I go, oh, I didn't know you guys weren't publishing. She goes, yeah, we'll publish it. And that's how it started. And I didn't want any money for it. So I said to her, because it's right in the front here, her picture's right in the front. And I said, well, I don't want any money from it. And all the money went to, I don't know if you can see it, but all of it went to Infant Welfare Society. Okay. So all the money, and 15,000 copies were printed, and they were $5 a piece. So they made 75 grand. And, it was a fundraiser as far as I was concerned. And then somebody said to me, well, when are you going to write an adult book? And that's when I wrote this book, which is based on a true story about two white boys who wind up working in an all-black factory right after Martin Luther King is killed. It's a true story. And anyway, so that's kind of what led to that. And I just, at that point, I realized, you know what, I want to keep writing. So, yeah.
Bill, this is a very, very important thing that you are doing when you write this book, explaining how difficult and how terrible opioids are. And our children need to know, all about that because they're being, quote unquote, affected by it. So this sounds like a great book. I want you to repeat the name of it and how people get it.
The Resurrection of Barachi, and it says it's a novel about a family caught in the opioid crisis. But you can get it on Amazon and Kindle. Anderson bookshops in the Chicago area have it. You can also get it on eBay. On eBay, it's set up for a donation to go to St. Jude's. So yeah, the book is the book's been out since last July. It's almost August 1st. It was at the end of July, and it's a pretty. I mean, I've gotten letters from people all over the country who've said things like, "Wow, I mean, that's exactly what happened to us." And both of these kids, just so I make this clear, they were both on prescribed opioids. Okay, I mean, now. Unfortunately, what happens is with one of them, which is true for many people, when his prescription runs out, he winds up taking other things to, and unfortunately, some of that stuff was like what you use for diarrhea. I'm forgetting the name, but right now,
Imodium.
Imodium. He was using Imodium. In the character in the book's using Imodium, and also he's using heroin at times. And that's, that's obviously what, but it was the Imodium that actually, in the story, the Imodium actually kills him. And it's based on, I had talked with various coroners that I knew through a couple of my cop friends. And yeah, there were a number of kids that died of Imodium poisoning. And because they ran out of their Suboxone, and Imodium will kind of do the same thing for you. But the problem with Imodium, unlike Suboxone, my brother's a cardiovascular surgeon, so he was able to help me a little bit. The Imodium actually attacks the heart. So the kid didn't really die of a drug overdose. His heart stopped. And that's why one of the two kids dies in the book.
A very important piece to write for sure. What is next for Bill Natale?
Next book up is it's already written, although it's like any book that you write, you're constantly being asked to do rewrites. So I'm in the middle of that. It will come out August 16th, 2021, and it is a book of short stories. So the stories, there's 32 in all. One story is only a page. Average story length is 9 to 10 pages, although one story is 47 pages. And that involves Mr. Rogers and Oprah Winfrey. And so it's kind of and actually, that's not really a fictional story. That's a story I'm aware of, having worked in the industry and having spent 3 days with Mr. Rogers as his press agent when he came to Chicago for a trip. So I know about the story.
William, one last thing. We're almost at the end of the show, and Mark is going to close it up. But here's what I want to know. With all the things that you're doing, albeit the filmmaking, writing books, doing various things in television and radio and that sort of thing, is there one thing that you feel that you've done that is so important to you? Is there anything that you could tell our audience?
Yeah, there was a PBS documentary. It was on 224 PBS stations. I don't know if most people know, but PBS is unlike most networks. So, it's a different, it just doesn't come out of New York or LA. Anyway, there has to be a presenting station, and then you line up the stations. But WTTW was the presenting station. It's called Water Pressures. I was hired to direct, and then about midstream, I was asked, well, would you also associate produce? And I said, sure. So with a brilliant woman by the name of Ann Feldman, Dr. Ann Feldman, she has a residency chair at Northwestern. She's done a number of things for NPR and PBS. So we filmed in India. We filmed in all throughout the United States in different places. And Adrian Grenier, who I know through a friend, you might know that name. He was the star of Entourage, HBO Entourage. We needed a host. We had a woman, a Bollywood star, and PBS said, no, that's not good for here. Now, we used the Bollywood star in India because it did play in India. It's played in Australia and it's played in Europe. In Europe, we used Adrian Grenier, who most people know from Entourage or various movies. And he turned out to be a huge water advocate. And we actually had another star lined up, but then Pepsi, who's our sponsor, said, no, we're going to use him for our thing. It was sort of like, what? But I told the producer, I said, I can probably get you Adrian Grenier. And she goes, oh my God, that'd be great. And I said, okay. So Water Pressures deals with the fact that we have a global water crisis. That's hard to tell anybody that lives near the Great Lakes. You just can't, they don't believe it. And yet we have a huge global water crisis that we're going to be dealing with, and that we're dealing with now, depending on what country you're in. In Israel, they're dealing with, for example, the Red Sea and how the tributary is getting, the northern part of it is getting smaller and smaller as it becomes more of a salt, where they get salt and Braylon salts and things like that, and which they make a lot of money off of. But it's basically ruining the lake altogether. Even as a source of groundwater, it's being affected. The groundwater aquifers here in the United States, because we filmed all over the United States as well, they're way down. So if people think, the US doesn't have a problem, they do. And the Colorado River is so rationed off that in terms of moving the tributaries to this part or that part or that part, I'm surprised we haven't had a water war between the states. So water is a big thing. The guy who, maybe you remember the guy who did default swaps, who made billions because he predicted default swaps and he invested against them. In other words, I don't know what you call that, short selling, I guess. It's the Big Short. At the end of the movie, if you watch the end of the movie, the credits tell you what his new investment is. It's water. And water rates are going up everywhere. And the reason why they're going up everywhere is because of the scarcity of potable water. There's only 2% potable water in the world. And, you can do what Israel's trying to do, which is desalination. But even that creates all sorts of problems. So, it's just not that easy to desalinate and solve your problems, because now you're dealing with all this salt, and it ruins, frankly, the water tables under the ground. So there's a lot of problems, and that's probably, in my opinion, one of the best pieces of work I ever did. It won all sorts of awards, although we didn't win an Emmy for it, and we did win an Emmy for Commit to Courage, which was something that I directed that dealt with the Medal of Honor winners. So I was pleased to be part of that. And that was a live broadcast, 90 minutes live, with jets flying overhead and a 21-gun salute with cannons and, all sorts of political figures, as well as all sorts of bands. And it was a busy day, to say the least. But it went off without a hitch, and we had a clean presentation. And so we garnered a nice Emmy for that. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, congratulations for that. You've done so much, and I still think there's so much more to come. It's unbelievable. So, Bill, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And Susan, as always, thanks for being with us. Viewers, don't forget to tune into our next show. This is Mark Hoberman thanking you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame, and have a great day. Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame. To contact Mark Hoberman, email him at info@gradesuccess.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame.